What if everything you thought you knew about human migration was incomplete? Long before the famous wave 60,000 years ago, our species had already begun stepping out of Africa again and again. These early pioneers, Homo sapiens like us, walked across deserts, climbed mountains, and braved Ice Age landscapes in small, scattered waves that vanished almost without a trace. Yet they carried fire, they carried memory, and they carried the first sparks of what it meant to be human. In this episode of Prehistoric Shadows, we journey deep into the forgotten migrations, those that didn't survive, but still echo in our bones. Stay with us. The past is older, stranger, and more powerful than we've been told. For decades, the story was simple, almost elegant in its clarity. Homo sapiens emerged in Africa around 300,000 years ago. Then, some 60,000 years ago, a single wave of migration spilled outward across the globe, seeding all non-African populations alive today. That narrative, clean and linear, became the backbone of textbooks and documentaries alike. But the Earth does not follow clean lines, and neither does our history. In recent decades, a cascade of fossil discoveries has begun to upend that simplicity. From the limestone chambers of Apodema in southern Greece to the wind-swept escarpments of Mislia in Israel, from the humid depths of Fuyan and Girindong caves in China to the green corridor of Al-Wusta in ancient Arabia, we now see clear evidence of multiple early Homo sapiens migrations waves that surged into Eurasia at 210,000 years ago, 180,000, 120,000, even 85,000 years ago. These were not false starts. They were bold, adaptive, human attempts at expansion. Yet none of these early journeys endured. Their footprints faded. Their genes disappeared. But their presence, brief as it was left, echoes in the archaeological record, quietly rewriting the story of who we are and how often we've tried to reach beyond our beginnings. To understand the deeper story of our species, we must first follow the trail of bones. Each fossil, each fragment of jaw or skull, is a timestamp etched in silence waiting to be heard. Around 300,000 to 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens first emerged in Africa, not as a sudden appearance, but as a slow unfolding a new form of human shaped by fire, cooperation, and thought. Then came a series of bold movements outward, waves of exploration long before the one that shaped our modern world. Roughly 210,000 years ago, a partial skull known as Apodema 1 was left behind in a cave in southern Greece. It is, as far as we know, the earliest trace of a modern human in Europe. Decades later, deep inside Mislia Cave in Israel, archaeologists uncovered a jawbone dated between 177,000 and 194,000 years ago. It belonged to a Homo sapienson who likely lit fires, knapped stone, and looked up at the stars. In southern China, teeth and jaw fragments from around 120,000 to 100,000 years ago revealed that modern humans had already reached East Asia. These were not Neanderthals, not Denisovans. They were us. By 85,000 years ago, in what is now Saudi Arabia, a single human finger bone rested beside the remains of hippos and lakes, long vanished. It was left behind during a time when the desert bloomed green and fertily, a brief window into paradise. Finally, between 60,000 and 50,000 years ago, came the wave that changed everything. The one that left its mark in our DNA. The one that reached Australia, Europe, Siberia, and, eventually, the Americas. But before that, there were others. And they walked the earth long before we knew their names. In the limestone cliffs of southern Greece, inside a cave overlooking the sea, a skull lay hidden for over 200,000 years. It was found in fragments, distorted by time, but unmistakably human. This was Apodemo 1, a partial cranium dated to roughly 210,000 years ago. Its features were startling: rounded back, high vault, lacking the elongated traits typical of Neanderthals. This was a modern human, and it appeared tens of thousands of years earlier than anyone expected. Even more striking was what lay deeper in the cave Apodema 2, a Neanderthal skull dated to around 170,000 years ago. The implication was as provocative as it was humbling. Modern humans had reached Europe first, and then disappeared. Whether pushed back by climate, outcompeted by Neanderthals, or simply absorbed into the shadows of history, these early Europeans left no descendants. But they left something else behind: a crack in the old timeline, a question mark carved into stone, and a reminder that our journey through time has never been linear, nor guaranteed. In the rugged limestone hills of Israel's Carmel Range, a cave once opened to the sea and the stars. There, a jawbone was found weathered by time, but unmistakably human. Dated between 177,000 and 194,000 years ago, it belonged to a Homo sapiens. Not a Neanderthal, not a hybrid, but one of us. Its presence rewrote the map of early human migration, placing modern humans in the Levant far earlier than previously believed. Scattered beside it were stone tool-shaped with the Levallois technique, a method requiring forethought, precision, and skill. There were signs of fire, burnt bone, blackened hearths. The cave held more than bones, it held memory. These people were not isolated wanderers. Their technology echoed Africa, suggesting a cultural thread had been carried with them across deserts and time. This was not just a journey of bodies, but of ideas. Miss Leah shows us that long before the Great Wave at 60,000 years ago, humans had already stepped beyond Africa's edge, with fire in their hands and knowledge in their minds. In the limestone caves of Skul and Kafze, nestled in the hills of Israel, something extraordinary was uncovered. Not just bones, but meaning. These sites, dated between 95,000 and 119,000 years ago, offer more than evidence of survival. They reveal the stirrings of something fully human. Bodies were buried with intention, not discarded. Some were laid in shallow graves, positioned with care, as if for sleep. Alongside them, tools, animal bones, and red ochre pigment, smeared onto bodies in a final act of ritual. Seashells, carried from the Mediterranean, were found pierced, likely worn as necklaces. These were not just adornments. They were symbols. Symbols of self, of group, of memory. Carvings and ochre markings suggest abstract thought capacity for representation. Long before 60,000 years ago, modern behavior was already present in the Levant. These were people who mourned, who marked identity, who understood that death was not the end. In Skul and Kafze, we do not just see Homo sapiens. We see humanity beginning to dream. Far from the Mediterranean, deep within the green karst hills of southern China, another chapter of our story was waiting in silence. In Fuyan Cave, archaeologists uncovered 47 human teeth perfectly preserved in limestone. They were dated to between 80,000 and 120,000 years ago. And most remarkably, they showed no signs of archaic traits, no Neanderthal, no Denisovan, only modern Homo sapiens. Thousands of miles from Africa, this was evidence of a bold eastward journey into the heart of Asia, long before the Great Migration at 60,000 years ago. Further south, in Girondon Cave, jaw fragments confirmed the same presence modern humans, older than 100,000 years. No crude hybrids, no primitive features, just us. These finds support a once speculative idea, a southern coastal route, a path through South Asia, hugging shorelines, following rivers, tapping into fish, fruit, and fire. It was not a single highway, but a network of lifelines, fleeting, fragile, yet real. And it carried humans not just eastward, but forward into unknown lands and unknown futures. Long before they were remembered, they were already there. In the heart of what is now the Saudi desert, a single human bone lay buried beneath ancient sands. It was not a skull or jaw, not a dramatic centerpiece, just a finger. But that finger, found at the site of Al-Wusta, told a story no less epic than any artifact carved in stone. Dated to around 85,000 years ago, the bone belonged to a modern Homo sapiens of us. Beside it lay Middle Paleolithic tools, shaped with skill. Nearby, the fossils of hippos and freshwater snails whispered of a different Arabia. This was not the arid wasteland we know today. It was green. It was wet. It was alive. A corridor of lakes and savannas stretched across the peninsula, inviting movement, inviting hope. Humans didn't just pass through. They lived, hunted, gathered, and perhaps stayed for a time. This find at Al-Wusta confirms that modern humans entered Arabia in multiple pulses, likely riding the rhythm of changing climate cycles. When the rains came, we followed. And when the desert returned, we vanished. But the finger remained silent proof that we had once touched the land, and perhaps were changed by it. Human migration has never followed a straight line because the earth itself never stood still. For early Homo sapiens, movement was not just about curiosity. It was about survival. Paleoclimate records reveal a rhythmic cycle that shaped our ancient footsteps. Warm interglacials followed by cold, isolating glacial periods. When the rains returned and deserts bloomed, corridors opened green paths across Arabia, the Levant, and Central Asia. Forests expanded, lakes formed, and humans moved. In these habitable windows, small groups ventured out of Africa, testing the limits of the known world. Some reached the Mediterranean coast. Others wandered into China, Arabia, even Europe. But when the climate turned, when ice returned, and water receded, those corridors closed. Populations shrank. Some vanished. Others retreated back into Africa's embrace. Yet time and again, the cycle repeated. We came back, not as victims of change, but as students of it. The earth dictated the tempo, and we moved to its rhythm, never fully stopped, never fully forgotten. Long after bones turn to dust, DNA remembers. Hidden deep within the genomes of Neanderthals and Denisovans are silent echo segments of Homo sapiens ancestry dating back nearly 200,000 years. This was not a one-time encounter. It was a history of meetings, partings, and unions written in flesh. A Neanderthal woman from Siberia, whose remains were found in a cave in the Altai Mountains, carried fragments of modern human DNA proof that our species met not once, but many times. These were not just competitors. They were partners, however briefly. And from those encounters, something lasting was born. When the successful migration of Homo sapiens surged out of Africa around 60,000 years ago, interbreeding happened again on a larger scale. Today, every non-African person alive carries within them a genetic inheritance, between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA. For some, traces of Denisovan ancestry as well. It is not enough to define us, but it is enough to remind us. We did not replace them cleanly. We absorbed them. And in doing so, we became something more complexless, pure, more human. Hybrids not just of blood, but of memory. Around 60,000 years ago, something changed. Homo sapiens, weathered by earlier failures and sharpened by generations of adaptation, left Africa once more. But this time, they would not vanish. This was the wave that would endure. Traveling along the southern coasts of Asia, they followed shorelines, fished tidal zones, and settled near rivers rich with life. They moved with knowledge, with purpose. By 50,000 years ago, they had reached Australia, crossing seas in ways we still don't fully understand. Soon after, they pressed into Europe around 45,000 years ago, where they encountered Neanderthals and reshaped the continent's future. They fanned out across North Asia, navigating the frigid edges of the Ice Age world. Eventually, they crossed into the Americas, completing the global arc of human dispersal. This single wave, unlike the many that came before, left a lasting legacy. Genetically, culturally, demographically, it is the root of nearly every non-African population alive today. Their descendants built civilizations, languages, mythologies. But their beginning was a journey, a crossing of thresholds, driven not by maps, but by memory, instinct, and fire. Long before Homo sapiens set foot beyond Africa, they were already becoming something extraordinary. They were not merely survivors. They were adapters. Across millennia, they had evolved not just physically, but mentally, socially, and spiritually. They learned to read the land, to thrive in savannas, hunt in forests, endure deserts, and harvest the sea along coastal shores. Each environment tested them, and each one left its mark. Their bodies adapted, developing traits like cold tolerance, efficient fat storage, and skin variations tuned to light and climate. But the greater change happened inside. They formed language, memory, teaching. They created tools that were more than extensions of the hand, they were extensions of thought. They buried their dead. They planned for tomorrow. They sang, painted, carved symbols into stone. Multidisciplinary studies from genetics to archaeology confirm what these behaviors imply. That by the time they left Africa in their final wave, Homo sapiens were already equipped with the intelligence, cooperation, and cultural depth to face new worlds. They didn't stumble into expansion. They prepared for it. At Prehistoric Shadows, we see the early migrations not as failures, but as foundations. These were what we call pseudo-out-of-Africa waves. Groups of Homo sapiens who were behaviorally modern, technologically capable, and culturally rich. They carved symbols. They buried their dead. They crossed deserts and followed coastlines. But they did not last. Climate, competition, and chance erased them from our direct lineage. And yet, they mattered. Their journeys shaped the world that followed. They pushed boundaries, geographic, cultural, and genetic. They interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans, leaving small echoes in the DNA of modern humans. They laid the groundwork for the wave that came after. We are the descendants of the final, successful migration approximately 60,000 years ago. But we walk in the shadows of those who tried before us. They are not forgotten. They are the first to imagine what lies beyond the horizon. And their legacy lives in the maps we draw, the symbols we carry, and the questions we still ask. If these ancient paths stir something in you, subscribe to Prehistoric Shadows. Together, we'll retrace the earliest footsteps that made us human.